Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to the World Global Reset United Nations conference call. It's always great to be back with our global family. And yes, it's another beautiful rise and shine day because Father Yah Allah has once again given us the breath of life. Well, family, we are moving ever more quickly in the end for the new beginning. We are already in the new beginning. New things changing. Everything is in alignment with what Father Yah and Yehoshua had set up. So we're moving forward very quickly, family, for the benefit of all of Father Yah Allah's children. And as we're moving forward, you know that my main focus is making sure that everyone on the planet is identified or indexed. This is a mandatory process. All 198 nations are participating in identifying themselves. Of course, they've already all been indexed. The nations have. Most of the nations have all of their people indexed. The one area that seems to be behind the eight ball, once again, is the so-called U.S. of A. We're looking at about 20% have been indexed to this point. So that means another 80% have yet to be identified. The identification process is mandatory under the Know Your Customer laws, under transparency. And as we're going forward, family, the people that are actually identified through the indexing process who have become sovereign principals to govern themselves under their creator without any outside interference, they are the ones that have the rights for land use. And so now, family, because so many people are moving across the planet, unidentified, undocumented, this process has been put in place to identify everyone. This is not only a process to identify everyone, but this is a process for restoration, protection, and redemption. So this was set up for mankind, for them to be restored and redeemed and protected. So we're moving forward quickly in this. And as I've been doing for quite some time, family, because we have new people on the calls constantly coming in, they need to understand the full background of how everything was done lawfully and in order, and how the global reset and why the global reset is in place. So I'm going to bring to you once again the information, the background history, and also going to be focusing on businesses being identified. I'll get to that here in just a few moments. But that's critical for the businesses to be identified or indexed as well, for them to be able to participate as we move forward. 40 plus years ago, Dr. Hindu I.L. Henderson, the ad hoc Chief Justice of the Universal World Court, Yehoshua Mashiach, went to the courthouse in Webster Parish, Louisiana, where his family owns 200,000 acres of land. Now, it's not by deed, but it was by treaty and land patent. Treaty is the highest form of land ownership, which is required to have to be a nation. A land patent is for their heirs and assigns forever. There is a final type of land record. Notice I said record, not ownership. That is a deed. If you own a home without a treaty or a land patent, you're going to notice that your deed says tenant. That means you have the right to work the land, build or live on the land, but you really do not own it. The actual treaty or patent holder, if they come back for their land, you would actually have to move your private property off of it. Therefore, if you're not indexed or identified, you don't have any lawful rights to land ownership or to land use. That gives the background of how land ownership works. Now, Dr. Henderson and his family owns through treaty and land patent 200,000 acres of land in Webster Parish, Louisiana. The treaty is known as the Treaty of Sycamore Shoals, which later became known as the Louisiana Purchase. That treaty was given to Dr. Henderson's great-grandfather, Colonel Richard Henderson, by the 5 indigenous autochthonous tribes, nations, that were here on this land for tens of thousands of years before the Europeans ever came. The reason it was given to them is they are direct descendants, their family.
Yes,
sir.
If I might just cut in for a brief moment, because recently I received a lot of texts from people based upon what you just talked about on the land ownership and all those things. For a matter of fact, I just received a text just this brief moment, I would say a couple of hours ago, it might be that, But I received one based upon them talking about the land and land ownership, talking about land grab. Right now, the United States government is trying to change the land grab law. See, back in 2022, believe it or not, the land grab laws was found to be illegal, as they always was. And they came out with something that was called the Land Grab Denial Act. In other words, they denied anybody to land grabs. And right now, that's what Donald Trump is doing, believing that his administration will be able to stop people like the Chinese, India, and all of these new would-be innovations of people that have what they would classify as done nothing more than found themselves in the United States of America by way of violation. So they're trying to prevent them from being able to do anything that's called land grab. There is no land grab, never has been in this land. The land grab, believe it or not, as the Hendersons, as you're talking now, and that's why I want to filter in here, we had approximately, and we had more than that, but we had approximately 20 million acres. Just for the Hendersons alone, we had 20 million acres, and this was not a land grab. This was the land that we owned before any Caucasian, Caucasian, pale-faced white man ever showed up on this land. We were, my family, we were roaming around on 20 million acres. 20 million. Just my family alone, Hendersons. And there were other families that were connected to the other millions of acres that was on this particular spot or this land. And then they just so happened to be the other 4 nations. I need people to understand what I'm giving them is truth. I don't care anything about what you're reading on global would-be so-called internet sites, social sites, social media. I don't care what you're reading about the United States government and what it said and how it gave out land grants and all these other things they're talking about. Everything they did or done was illegal. Everything that they're trying to do now is illegal. Donald Trump, no other administration that has a pale-faced, colored look or system set up to it will ever find any method or way to legalize what has always been illegal. It's illegal. They didn't have the right to come here and do any land grab. They don't have any right to anything that they're classifying as domestic, some so-called would-be courage to claim that they have domestic laws that will take it. To claim anything, domestically or any other way. The United States of America claimed when it first came into existence that the people were doing nothing more than abandoning their land. Abandoning land. And that's when they came up with all of this so-called domestic claims to be able to claim the land due to the fact that no one was claiming it or no one was on it. It was obvious why everyone was not on the land, because they were being put to death by those European Caucasians who were criminals that came from their nation, and they were placed on this land as criminals. So all of the claims that they're coming up with are illegal. They killed people in order to be able to domesticate the land in their manner, or in the order in which they wanted to claim it in. So the land was never, ever abandoned. The land never, ever will be abandoned. As a matter of fact, all of the people that were of this land came out of this land. They came out of the ground here. They will always be part of the ground. That's what sovereignty, once again, has its place. Sovereignty. Sovereignty is the soil. It's the ground. And sovereign is the breath of life that gives that soil life. When everyone finally gets that, and there will be elementary English P brain, everything will be fine. There's going to be wars, many wars to come. There will also be rumors of war. But the end is not yet. This land will be fought over, and it will be won by the melanated people. The melanated people, if they listen to me, they don't have to pick up one weapon. They don't have to create or build one missile. They don't have to go out and find themselves looking for some nuclear chemical to use on people. All they got to do is sit down and shut up. Yah-Allah, God of the universe, has already taken care of everything that you need. But we got so many, I would say, under the table, behind the back, cutthroat, excuse me, I got to use this word, niggers, that don't know how to sit down and be quiet and stop thinking they're going to be able to rap their way or sing their way into any would-be acceptance among something that is known as the Caucasian would-be system. Sit down and be quiet and shut up. excuse me, and no offense to the melanated people that are already gone. I don't need Michael Jackson. I don't need Martin Luther King. I don't need Malcolm X. I don't need Prince. I don't need James Brown. I don't need any of those people that I just named to help me save this land. I don't need T.D. Jakes. I don't need Creflo Dollar. I don't need any of those men I just named to help me save this land. This land has already been saved by Yah Allah, God of the universe. And there's not going to be one Caucasian, Caucasian, white cracker that comes from hell or any other place is going to be able to change that. As a matter of fact, every Caucasian, Caucasian, pale-faced idiot that comes on this planet, KKK or any other would-be organization or branch, is going to die at the hands of God. Irregardless of whatever they want to believe, he don't exist, he may exist, maybe he's white with blonde hair and blue eyes, maybe he got on a cross, maybe he didn't. All that sounds good. At the end of the day, they will be exterminated off this planet. The Caucasian race, it will be gone. They want to know why now. So I would say relevant to everybody on the planet to recognize that there's a lot of mixture going on in the Caucasian world. Their daughters, their sons are leaving the natural use of some other Caucasian to go out to make babies with other races. Whether they find Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Mexican, black, African, it doesn't matter. They're looking to put back the blood on this planet in its fullness like it was in the beginning. I told you everything that was done and was changed by any would-be stretch of the imagination of some Caucasian world will be returned to its original state. The Pangea will come back. The Pangea is going to come back as we recognize it now. The shaking of the earth is not just because it wants to shake to scare you or to put you in some kind of panic mode. It's shaking so it can come back to its original form. And I don't care how many Caucasian pale-faced crackers that wants to preach the sermon about Jesus the Christ and any other God he might pull out his rear end. He is not going to be able to change everything that was written, even in the books that he's now trying to find some way to dock it or to change. It's not going to happen. And again, I say, if I could get those niggers to sit down and be quiet and stop undermining each other based upon the fact that they think they're going to be brought to a table of acceptance where the gold will be fine, refined, and the silver will be repurposed. I need them to sit down and be quiet. It's already been done. The earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, all that is beneath it, in it, around it, and above it. It belongs to Yah Allah, God of the universe, and yes, if they want to call him that, God is a nigga. He was dark and black, and everything was void until he said, let there be light. Nobody's going to be able to change that. Nobody. So for the sake of everybody arguing about the land and who it belongs to, why it belongs, I got people, and I want to say to them, being evicted now out of houses and buildings. Let me help you out. Those houses and buildings have no value whatsoever. None. They were nothing more than material taken out of this land. Most of them are made of trees, bricks, and any other type of material that you want to name, plastics, whatever. It was taken out of this land. And this land is the only thing that has value or that will ever be able to produce value. Sit down, people. Let the world and the prophecy take its course. And you just sit back and live and relax. That's all you got to do. I can assure you that if you're in your house, you're down to your last would-be cookie and your last half a glass of milk. Sit down and be quiet. Because if my father don't want you to starve, if he don't want you to thirst to death, you ain't going nowhere. And you won't be them had a half a glass of milk. You won't be them had your last cookie. And I guarantee you, and you'll still be living. Sit down. My beloved, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and I need you to understand something as well. Dr. Henderson family didn't have to do a dadgum thing because it was already done. All we did was allow everyone on the planet to recognize it. That's why Dr. Henderson is out here now. I'm out here informing the people to open your eyes Open your ears. He who has eyes, let him see. He who has ears, let him hear. What thus says God of the universe that no man can change. That's what Dr. Henderson is out here doing. And for all of them that keep sending me messages, I can't wait until you're gone. I can't wait till you leave. Everybody that talks bad against this, that talks bad against that, they normally die. Let me help you out. If I die, I don't care. You got me confused. What you better be worried about is the day that I come back after I die. Because I'm going to hunt you down. And I'm going to kill you while I am in a ghost spirit. So you better stop trying to wish me bad luck. You better be worried about what I'm praying for. Because you need to understand, I'm talking directly to my Father. I don't care about being on your planet or leaving your planet. You better be worried about what I'm going to do to your planet when I'm not here. Shut up. Sit down. I'm going to allow you to take it back, host. Because they ain't worth me talking to them.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Well, I'm going to bypass and fast forward the foundation, because he only used 200,000 acres in that of the 20 million to put the global reset together. And he and our global fiduciary, Joachim, has submitted several bills which have been signed into law, and corresponding laws have been implemented in other nations to put together foundational work for the global reset. I'm not even going to go into in depth what those were, but H.R. 4405 was the Jubilee Act for responsible lending and expansive debt cancellation. That passed the 111th Congress. That was submitted December 16th of 2009. Now, Doctor was seated as the ad hoc Chief Justice of the Universal World Court on June 28th of 2010, because all 198 nations recognized who he was through his blood and his true documentation. They recognize the fact that he is of the bloodline of King David, and he just gave you what Scripture says regarding this planet, that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and he gives it to his children and his children's children as an eternal covenant. He has already proven, Doctor has already proven, that he is of that bloodline. Therefore, he had the lawful right to use the assets of this planet to reset the global financial system, which is what he did. He brought the land to our fiduciary, Joachim, to back the new digital financial system. Another bill that was submitted on July 25th of 2011, H.R. 2560, known as the Cut, Cap, and Balance Act, passed the House July 19th of 2011. That's what you see going on now under the Trump administration, the Department of Government Efficiency, cutting the budget, capping it at a specific level, and balancing the budget. Again, those just were U.S. Laws passed, but our brothers and sisters in the 198 nations have corresponding laws as well. So everyone is working in compliance with what Yehoshua and Joachim had put up, what Father Yah has instructed them to do to reset this entire planet. And as he just mentioned, we are going back to the way it was in the beginning. Now, under the Obama administration, with both males and females in the House and Senate, they agreed to bail out all of the corporations, which included all 501c3 religious institutions. They signed off on the World Trust that Dr. Henderson, Yehoshua, had set up to reset the entire planet, to restore back to God's children what was stolen from them by this old Babylonian system. On March the 1st of 2013, Doctor and our global fiduciary submitted to all 198 nations, plus the U.S., the master sequester, to find out where those funds went, to have it all returned. Now, all 198 nations have returned their responses. Many of those funds did end up in mostly European nations. So far, they're still waiting to hear back from the U.S. However, it was signed into law in the U.S. and became a budgetary authority for the U.S. October the 5th of 2013 under House Joint Resolution 85, which is the Emergency War Powers Act. Section 101B2 stated that the presidential sequestration submitted March the 1st of 2013 has become the budgetary authority to the U.S. government budget. So that's commonly called the debt ceiling. If you're hearing them talking about it in the media, they're talking about the debt ceiling. All this information, along with others, is on our website, sovcpr.net. There's a tab at the top of the homepage that says library. You can drill down through those and look at a lot of embedded links. So again, how does this all tie into the monetary system? Well, our fiduciary, Joachim, is the grandson of Belle DaCosta Green and J.P. Morgan. Ms. Green was instrumental in building the Morgan Library and documentation that built the J.P. Morgan empire. Our beloved brother, Joachim, inherited an incredible mind for numbers and research. And so Dr. Henderson brought the land to him to back the new digital monetary system. Now, they worked together for 40 years to build the global reset to restore back to Obadiah's children what belongs to them. On July the 4th of 2016, both the World Treaty, known as the Covenant Treaty of Amexem, which is the 198 Nations Agreement of Peace and Friendship, and the World Constitution were given to all of the nations by Dr. Henderson and signed by honorable judges, scribes, International Council of Disciples, and Native American chiefs. This covenant holds the title deed to the world. The World Constitution was actually created after a model of the original Constitution penned by Doctor's great-grandfather, Colonel Richard Henderson. Now, we mentioned earlier in the call, and we often say that indexing is transparent and it is mandatory. It is in compliance with the Know Your Customer laws. All of those laws are in place globally. Well, because we have had so many undocumented migrants moving across the planet, it has created a massive problem with the global entry system and identification. So now a new ID has come out. It has a star or a flag, and it's now required by all state, federal, international embassies, police, hospitals, etc. That ID is now mandatory. Also, you're not going to be identified if you're not indexed. You will be actually classified as non-productive because that system is working against you. So your indexing actually removes you from that system and identifies you to all 198 nations. Because when you submit your indexing paperwork to us, it is presented to the Universal World Court for registration. When it is registered, everyone on the planet will be able to recognize you as a sovereign principal. Do not confuse this with a sovereign citizen. You cannot be both. You are either sovereign or you are a citizen. A citizen means you're under the jurisdiction of a nation. For you to be sovereign, it means you govern yourself under your creator without outside interference. Now, for those of you in the so-called U.S., the 80% of you that are still hanging out there, the nations know that the United States of America is not a nation, never has been. They have no true documentation. They never had a treaty. They were a corporation that was founded in 1871, but even that corporation has now been shut down. So if you are calling yourself a U.S. citizen, have a passport, and are traveling internationally, some of the nations now are not allowing those people calling themselves U.S. citizens to come into their nation because they know if there's no nation, there's no citizen, therefore they're still classifying you as being unidentified. Again, you must be indexed to be identified. So those of you that are not identified are being declared non-productive and are being exterminated. Now, just earlier in this call, Yehoshua mentioned the Caucasians. The Caucasians were never from the land commonly called the U.S. of A. And because you're a lot more lightly complected than anyone else of the melanated family, you're easy to spot. If you're not indexed, you're already going to be classified non-productive because you're not identified. Anyone that is remaining unidentified is being presumed to be an enemy combatant because they've not stepped forward and truly identified themselves. Enemy combatants and non-productives are being executed. An example of this, and I use this same example because it's spot on. In Canada, under Prime Minister Mark Carney, over 60,000 Canadians have been killed by that regime. One government caseworker turned down a disabled veteran's request for a wheelchair lift to be installed in her home. Okay, this was a veteran, Canadian veteran, female. She needed a wheelchair lift. Instead of offering her assistance, the government caseworker offered to have her killed or euthanized instead. The veteran was considered non-productive and not indexed. Again, the system is working against you, not for you. Now, there are 4 trusts overseeing the reset of this planet. principal is the Melchizedek. Our fiduciary, Yakim, has been placed as principal over that trust. Under that is the Sovereign Civil People's Rights Trust. Dr. Henderson, Yehoshua is trustee of that. That is the World Trust to reset the entire planet.
Again.
Two trusts. Yes, sir.
Again, Hope. And I'm monitoring real closely now based upon the fact of all of the questions I get from around the world. And the world is much more knowledgeable of what's going on, who we are, where we came from, why we're doing what we're doing. The world, again, this is the World Global Network, Reset, Restoration Network family. So Dr. Henderson, known as Yehoshua Mashika, and the one that they know as the fiduciary agent, the principal, Yakim, known as Mr. Kim Green, they need the whole United States of America needs to understand. We're just not recognized in the United States of America. We are recognized worldwide.
Amen.
In every nation, they recognize us. That's what everyone needs to first understand. Mr. Kim Green, who is known as Yakim, is known as the true J.P. Morgan of this world. The finance system. They built it. His grandmother, Della Costa Green, built that empire. That cracker white, Mr. So-called J.P. Morgan, was nothing more than wanting to claim himself to be her lover. And so when they came up with the law to claim that this so-called community property, he was able to somehow swindle his way into being the sole ownership based upon being the masculine force of the world, in her world. Same thing happened on the other side of the land, which belonged to the Hendersons. Okay, the same thing happened in regards to that. Enough white cracker boys was able to kill off some of those men, marry their wives or take their wives to be their wives, and then claim the land through them through what is known as so-called community property. None of that could take place because there's no such law on this planet about community property. Excuse me for all the women that will get angry at me for saying this now. But all that was placed there to prevent you from owning anything or from having anything. They knew that anytime they could put a strong man in charge of you, that man would overpower you and take control over whatever it was you was claiming through your ex-husband, your father, your uncle, your brothers, or whomever else you was using as a strong masculine force. They would be able to take it over. That's why they gave you that claim of community property and all the other BS stuff they got you running around claiming now, such as the glory of God. You're not in the glory of God. You're the glory of man. You always will be. That will never change because that's what God placed in order. And no man can change that order. So for the sake of everybody understanding how this works right now, the United Nations, I'm not talking about that one in New York where Donald Trump just spoke to them with only about 45 of some so-called nations that showed up. And every nation that showed up is in need. All 45 nations that showed up over there in New York, as my dad was said, they didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to pitch it out. So they showed up believing that the United States of America, with their big talk and their broad shoulders, were going to be able to ride them on their shoulders, that either they were going to be able to float through the hot wind that they blew out their mouth. None of that's going to happen. We don't care what Donald Trump talked about over there. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump's first would-be travels to the United Nations, his first speech 6 years ago, he talked 21 times he spoke about sovereignty. This time, he didn't say sovereignty one time out of his mouth. But you want to believe something? Let me help you out. His sole speech over there was entitled The Sovereignty Protection of the Nations. That was his speech title, but he never used it not one time he was there. So nobody cares about what's being said out of those cockador crackers' mouth over there. You know, I stopped you for the simple fact, I need us to get this right. So I'm going to ask you the question and help me out with this. Once again, host, so I can help you out with your presentation that you're giving everybody that must be done truthfully and understood even by yourself because the nations understand it. And they, again, find you and everyone that you're talking to in question because y'all don't have the true understanding of what took place back in 2000 when Dr. Henderson and our would-be, because I called him that, Dr. Kim Green, when they decided they were going to go before all of the world to explain to them what was what and show them all the laws. I took the land laws to every nation on this planet. Believe it or not, the land grab has nothing just to do with the United States of America. The land grab laws has everything to do with everybody on the planet. And if you go and read those land laws, you will find it out. The United States back in 1982 came up with something that they were classifying to be some so-called Land Grab Prohibiting Act of 1982. And what that was, they came up with those laws in 1982 to prevent the people from claiming back their land. That's what they did in 1982. The Land Grab Act started way back in 1783. 1783 is when it began. It was all about none other than a place called Great Britain wanting to claim all the land based upon some so-called would-be kingship, some king would-be so-called status. King. So I'm going to ask you quickly to find this, host, because I need you to go and do what I do. See, I need the people to go back to the simplicities of life. If you keep it simple, you won't find yourself out here like everyone else floating around like some so-called would-be genius of idiots, saying things and doing things that's not even relevant. Neither do they have any systematic world trust behind it. Nobody cares because the world knows better. And they're not going to bounce or allow the United States of America just because it claims to have some golden goose somewhere that they keep pulling golden eggs out of its butt to come and buy them off anymore. 45 nations at the max showed up over there in New York. I say it was less than that. Anytime America claims a number that high, you can assure yourself it was very, very lower than that. There may have not even been 20 nations that showed up because they're claiming too high when they say 35 or more than 40. Nobody cares about what America is talking about right now. Those nations are building armies right now to eliminate the United States of America and all of their suit-wearing individuals, like to include some King Charles. They're preparing to eliminate them off the planet. That's what I want you to do me a favor right quick. I need you, host, to give the people the definition of what is a citizen. Then I need you to give them a definition of what Commonwealth is all about.
Yes, sir. Okay. What does it mean to be a citizen? Citizenship is a membership and allegiance to a sovereign state, simply speaking. And Commonwealth.
What is
Commonwealth?
What is citizenship? Once again.
It is an allegiance, membership or allegiance to a state.
Let me help you out with it. Because, see, as I know for fact, see, I was a developing teacher before. I believed in teaching, but at the same time, developing my students. If I were not developing them to become, I would say, conscious, intelligent people, I was going to put them in a state of being unconscious and idiots on the planet. I did not want them to develop to be that. So I set out to develop them where they would be conscious people and intelligent people rather than unconscious and idiots. Okay? So I need you to understand. The definition of citizen, if you read it straight from their book, in which they have this book in their libraries, and every library around the world got it in their own would-be interpretation, you're going to have a problem. It says a legal, this is what a citizen is, a legally recognized subject or national of what? A state or commonwealth. Either native or nationalized. That's what it says. That's the first definition of a citizen. Then they go on to say a citizen of the world, a person who is at home in any country. That's what citizen means. Now, then you have to break it down to the next common denomination of intelligence, where everybody will be able to acknowledge it and recognize it and understand it. Commonwealth. An independent country or community, especially a democracy, right? Republic. Right? Is that what you not see? Okay. Let me help you out. We're not Commonwealth. because we're not under some Great Britain.
Right.
The Commonwealth is full, they say, Commonwealth of Nations, an international association consisting of the UK together with states that were previously part of British Empire and dependency. The British monarch is the symbol head of the Commonwealth. Does that definition state who the United States is?
Yeah, no.
But the United States of America thinks so under the so-called would-be Caucasoid world of ignorance and arrogance as Donald Trump went prancing over to Great Britain just recently, to the UK, wearing a turkey suit with a turkey tie and a turkey jacket on, whereby they normally place their right hands inside of their breast pockets, feeling for nothing more than grandpa's would-be golden watch. Stay with me. Where they normally pull it out and check to see if they're on their own time or somebody else's time. That's not who we are in this land as melanated people. Never have been, never will be. You may recognize Queen Elizabeth. The average cracker on this planet may recognize Queen Elizabeth, but nobody else does. All right. I don't know about you, but I know for a fact my grandparents, my forefathers, none of them went to Queen Elizabeth's house to wash anything in her house, to clean anything in her house, and especially not her rear end. And my family has always been classified freemen. Freemen. We didn't work in nobody's would-be so-called cotton field because we own those cotton fields. Excuse me. I'm just calling it like it is. Everybody that worked on the Henderson's would-be plantation, and I can show it to you in writing, were crackers. They were white people. They slept on my grandfather's floor inside of a big white house where they worked out in the hay fields, cutting hay and baling hay, boxing hay, tying it with nothing more than the hay strings. And they slept on my grandfather's floor. White people. He did that to protect them from Commonwealth and from their grandpa Pappy, King Henry, known as to them King George. You know, when everybody gets history right, elementary first, then they can classify themselves to be some so-called would-be intelligent genius being or some higher would-be knowledge. I get so tired of explaining this to the United States of America, and I've written them letters from the moment that I was 16 years old. I started writing them letters in regards to my grandfather and them giving me information, and my great-grandfather giving me information. And it was to reset the whole entire planet. I'm there now. I'm not about to reverse that. I'm not about to reverse that. And I don't need some cracker system to teach it and some cracker institution whereby they only try to manipulate it to benefit themselves and classify everybody else as being idiots. Not going to happen. We're beyond that state. Donald Trump can find the next would-be golden island. He is not going to be able to get enough people on that island to convince them that he is a wise, intelligent man that's come to save the world. Because right now, he has one problem. He's in the wrong skin color. He's in the wrong skin tone. And that's never, ever going to be a problem where everybody's going to see that white skin tone as being either a ghost or some would-be so-called spirit, whereby everybody is supposed to yield to it. You come walking out of the jungle now, painted in white skin, they're going to exterminate you. They're going to execute you. My advice, if you're in the jungle now, dressed in white skin, stay there. Because it's a danger out here for you. Because everybody on this planet now knows who they are, where they came from. They allow a so-called monetary system to creep into their lives based upon 8 would-be idiots who was possibly drunk off a wild turkey, claiming to have found some golden nugget somewhere that they were going to bring to the world to save the world. And now all of that has been found to be a lie or an illusion. And no nation, no people is about to allow themselves to be manipulated again. So they can have another United Nations meeting. They can get up to 80, 90 nations there. They will still not have the majority of the 198 sovereign nations on this planet. And those sovereign nations are not about to let some white boy in a blue suit and a red tie and a white shirt manipulate them like they were manipulated before. That's never going to happen again. He can put on some British outfit, put on a powdered wig. He can come out and claim to be a British monarch king, an anarch king. He can claim to be a king of kings. He can do whatever he wants to do, but at the end of the day, he is going to be exterminated off this planet. That's where the world is at right now. And right now, our government, your government, the government in which says that they're over us, ain't running nothing. And them nations is telling them about their land grab to go somewhere too. Because right now, your government, their government, is trying to stop Indians or the people from India from land grabbing land. They're trying to stop the Chinese from land grabbing land. They're trying to stop the Japanese from land grabbing land. They're trying to stop the Russians from land grabbing land in the United States of America, which they need to read those people contracts. So those people got contracts with the original owners of the land. And those agreements are legal. And whatever the crackers are talking about at the White House, they have no legal obligation to nothing they're talking about. And they can put the FBI, they can put whatever they want to, the CIA, they can put the Homeland Security, they can get the so-called education director, they can get the medical director, they can make them all white and put them in charge. And at the end of the day, these other nations are going to eliminate them out of their positions and off this land because they got a contract to do so, a legal contract to do so. And there's nothing nobody can do to change that because everybody was asleep in 2000 when those contracts were signed and agreed upon based upon the sovereignty and the sovereign of this world internationally and even to the with these so-called heavens. The white people were asleep. Welcome to waking up to your demise. I know. Go ahead and threaten me if you want to, and I'm going to show you what I mean. Y2K, you slept, you idiot. Now you're awake. Read it and weep. Again, it's back to you, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm doing what I'm going to have to do along with you. And after we get finished, you and I, we'll be able to close the call. But you take back over before you left off that. I yield.
Okay, sir, thank you. Well, what does indexing provide for you? Okay, remember, it's mandatory. It identifies you to the world as a non-combatant or non-enemy. When you are indexed, when you become indexed, you agree to live under the 5 divine principles of life, which are love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. It puts you on a do not detain list from Interpol, which is the International Police, down to your local police department. And for those of you, especially in America, or the U.S., if you want to call yourself that, that do not detain list does not mean that you can go out, create havoc, and get away with it. Not going to happen. Because if you're indexed, you're supposed to be living under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. It gives you internationally recognized status as a sovereign principle under the Protected Persons Act of 1973. This means as a sovereign principle, you govern yourself without outside interference under your creator. It removes you from the jurisdiction of that old Babylonian system. It also removes you as collateral for their debt. That old system has already collapsed. What you're seeing now is the domino effect of the collapse of that Babylonian system. It will not raise its ugly head again. It also gives you store value credit in the new digital financial system for $1 billion in store value credit. The reason is that figure is high is because Dr. and our fiduciary went back 1,000 years since its creation to do an estimate of the value of the works of your ancestors' hands, and they came up with $1 billion. And because Dr. Henderson, Yehoshua, has the lawful right to use the assets of this entire planet to back the new system, they could set it at that rate.
Once again, I'm going to interrupt you. Again, I say I believe that we're working together, right?
Absolutely.
The billion had nothing to do with an evaluation. for no work that was done. The billion came from the word that we took it from, bullion. Bullion. What does bullion mean?
Gold.
Look up bullion.
Okay.
See,
Yes, sir.
This is why I need to make sure that I maintain staying on the call with you, okay? And that's because all the nations know exactly what was done in 2000. The nations know that this actually started in 1974. The nations already know that this so-called would-be United States claim to have some land grab act of where they were refusing to allow the people to reclaim their land based upon some so-called United States land grab claim, and they were taking it back. That happened back in 1982. So all the nations disagreed with that. They told the United States to go fly a kite. Somebody trying to hear you talking about an act to what? To refuse of the land grab. You're going to say you grabbed the land, but now the people cannot grab their land back. And they would say nobody should agree to that. The United States of America sent that claim all over the United world, and all nations disagreed with them. Just as they're disagreeing with them now on everything that they're doing. It didn't just start. President Johnson, when they were doing the civil rights claim and movement, was one of those presidents that were also trying to sign on to what was known as an act to refuse the black people from reclaiming their land. He was one of those that signed off on that. He was one of those known as rednecks at that time. Even though he was all for the civil rights movement, he signed the bill for civil rights. He signed it. Yet and still, secretly, he was one of those that were denying the blacks to reclaim their land. Because he knew that once they got their rights under the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, which was all for allowing them to now become citizens, once they became citizens, they would be able to claim their land back. Before that, they were not recognized as citizens, so they didn't have the right to have land. Is anybody getting this, or is it just me?
That makes sense, sir.
See, this is what the United States of America right now needs to be. Their government needs to be on this point of what I'm talking about, and on the level of what I'm talking about. This is where they need to be, not talking about some monetary system, not talking about some measles shot, not talking about some would-be so-called COVID shot, not talking about some so-called would-be medical problems and situations that we got. But all that came from England. And I'm not afraid to say that, England. All that came from England. All them diseases and all that stuff was brought to the United States of America by way of those foreign nations such as England, Great Britain, Spain. And the reason why, because they were the ones that came across the water and just happened to be so, I would say, discovery. They were going into places like the Antarctic and grabbing all them germs that have been frozen for many times and many centuries over and bringing it with them, okay? And they just so happened to thaw out in these different lands in which they finally found themselves able to venture to. You need to understand, the melanated community, the black folks, the Africans, you want to call them, because they're not African Americans. They have always been in this land. And they were traveling back and forth to Africa. They were traveling back and forth to Spain. That's where the Moors came from. They were traveling back and forth to Great Britain. The one thing they did different than what them Caucasoids, once they learned how to steward a stir ship based upon the navigation of the so-called Moors, the niggers, and which found themselves on those ships by telling them the direction to go in. One thing about those melanated people that were on that ship, none of them was collecting any of those germs that was frozen and bringing them with them. They knew that stuff was there. They just wasn't getting it, bringing it back. But because of the white man's mind to always want to explore everybody's business but his own, he grabs up all that stuff and takes it from one place to another. You want to know why we got anaconda snakes right now in Lake Erie? We got anaconda snakes right now in Lake Bistineau in Shreveport, Louisiana. We got anacondas right now in Lake Dallas in Dallas, Texas. You want to know why? Because some cracker, white boy, wanted to be so would-be inquisitive about crap that was not his. He went over to all those lands where they had these giant snakes, and he decided to bring one back as a baby with him. And it grew up, and it began to start mingling and doing what he normally going to find himself doing, sleeping with other would-be so-called nationalities and different other would-be personalities, and they began to sleep with rattlesnakes. They began to sleep with nothing more than garden snakes, and they now are big, giant garden snakes that have the ability to be nothing more than an anaconda. That's what happened. And when the white man finally decides to stop trying to discover everything that wasn't meant for you to discover, you're going to be all right. That's why you got a black wife in your back room right now. And now you're wondering how to get rid of her. And we're going to tell you right now, let the brothers tell you right now, because this is all of us echoing. If you got that female in your life and you done had a baby with her, she's going to follow you to your grave. And she's going to stay in your business until you're dead. And after you die, she's going to take over your business. So let us help you out. King Harry, you got a baby's mama that's going to follow you to your grave. And you better keep a job, because she's definitely going to keep putting child support on you until she gets some of your money. I yield.
Yes, sir. I've got the definition for bullion. Refers to precious metals, most commonly gold, silver, platinum, or palladium, in the form of bars, ingots, coins, or rounds that are valued primarily by their weight and intrinsic metal content rather than by face value or collectible appeal. It's defined as high-purity metal, typically at least 99.5% pure for gold bars and 99.9% pure for silver bars, with the London Bullion Market Association setting those standards for good delivery bars. The term originated from the French word bullion, meaning boiling, reflecting the historical process of refining metal in a melting house.
That's how we came up with the value for the people of at least $1 billion. We didn't do it because of the works of their fathers, their mothers' hands, any work they had done on the land, none of that. We did it based upon the precious would-be so-called jewels of this land and all that. That's where we came up with $1 billion from. I need everyone to understand, Dr. Henderson may not look that intelligent to you. He may not speak that intelligent to you. But there is no other one like me on this planet or any other planet to come. I yield.
Thank you, sir. I'm making notes and changing these on my documents, so thank you. Well, indexing had been free, family, for 30 years plus, because Dr. Henderson Yehoshua Mashiach had paid the price for everyone to be indexed. However, because it was free, the people thought it had no value. They thought it was a scam. They thought it was a hoax. Thought somebody was trying to steal their Social Security number. None of that was true. What he had provided to the entire planet through the indexing process was absolutely priceless. It was your sovereign rights back. You being restored back to what Father Yah created you in the very beginning. The very breath of life as a sovereign. And your rights to the land which you came from through sovereignty. Well, it had been free all that time up until August the 23rd of 2022. At that time, the time of grace was over and the people were going to have to pay to be indexed. Now, you need to understand what this actually does for you, as it restores you back. Also, as the ad hoc Chief Justice of the Universal World Court, he opened up the World Court for the people to be able to send in letters of complaint and intent, because some of the nations were under